I know you do.
All right, I call this meeting to order. Rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore. Here. Mrs. Thompson. Here. Mr. Morris.
Here.
Mr. Bittner.
Here.
Mr. Shaboo.
Here.
Mr. Lunder.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here. First up, we have a public hearing tonight. Public hearing on resolution number 2023-R-15 as amended. If you could please read it by its title.
Our resolution number 2023-R-15 amended, a resolution approving the 2024 budget.
Would the administrative director please provide a brief explanation of the resolution?
This is just a estimate of taxes that we project will be received in 2024.
Are there any questions from the audience on the resolution? Hearing none, we will go now hear from persons who wish to speak in favor of the resolution. If you'd like to speak, come to the lectern, state your name, address. Hearing none. We will now hear from persons who wish to speak against the resolution. Hearing none. Do any members of council wish to speak on the resolution? Hearing none, this public hearing is closed at 7:01. Moving on. All right, approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of council, June 13th, 2023. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Motion for passage.
Seconded.
Motion made by Mrs. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Morris for passage. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore? Aye. Mrs. Thompson? Aye. Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo?
Aye.
Mr. Lunder?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye. Is there any correspondence? Clerk, do you have any correspondence?
I have no correspondence.
Does anybody on council have correspondence
I do.
tonight? Yes, sir.
I received a phone call last week from Cheryl Coonan, Executive Director of Mentor Public Libraries. Apparently, there was a serious incident down here. There, men are on the Lake Branch. There's two fences, Aqua Ohio and theirs, like in a shape with an L, and in between there's a gap of about 3 feet. Apparently, there's been some serious incidents in there. Through the help of Mr. Ness, we provided the director with information. So she sent us the appropriate form, and she and the branch manager will show up at the planning and zoning meeting on the 10th to request permission to tear down their fence.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I received some feedback from some of the residents. The Park and Recreation Board sponsored a stargazing event down at Lobo Park last Friday night. The feedback we got from the residents about that event was they had a really nice time. If the light could be addressed, for the next event. They said we could talk about that. I don't know if it can or not, but maybe we can reposition some things if we do another stargazing event out of the park.
Okay, anyone else? Hearing none, we'll move on to the good stuff. Administration and department head reports. Fire and Safety Director, Mr. Eva, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Johnson, members of council, the public here this evening. I will turn over to Chief Keeling to present his department award.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I thought that we would never have a better time to issue some awards when everybody was here for this happy occasion. So I would like to start with Controlman Sisternino. This is for 2020 due to COVID and some procrastination on my own part. We kind of got away from giving out the department awards for a while. However, I would be remiss if I didn't recognize some people before I left, so. 2021 patrolman Sisternino observed a pickup truck parked in the driveway of a residence in the city. He observed several things that appeared to be out of the ordinary, including a black hose running from the cabin of the truck to the tailpipe, paper stuffed in the door, steel in the openings, and a blanket covering the windshield of the running truck. Based on these observations, he approached the truck to investigate further. He found a male sitting in the truck who was attempting to end his life. Through his actions on that day, he prevented a tragic incident from happening to an individual in crisis. Patrolman Sisternino was able to get the male to the hospital for treatment. Additionally, Leo Sisternino served as an acting sergeant from July 2020 until mid-October 2020. As an acting sergeant, Patrolman Sisternino directed his coworkers and assisted them whenever he could. Being summertime is some of the busiest activity times for the police department. Shortly after being named an acting sergeant, Patrolman Sisternino was called out to coordinate the investigation of a murder-suicide in the city. Patrolman Sisternino stepped up to the challenge of leading part-time officers who were working the shift that day by responding to the scene from home and taking control of the scene until the lieutenant arrived on scene. That summer, Patrolman Sisternino also prepared numerous scheduling issues, proving reports, and preparing cases for commission to the court. COVID-19 was beginning to control the world at that time. First responders were at the forefront of the world. First responders did not have the luxury of working from home. They had to confront the deadly virus firsthand. For these reasons, Patrolman Sisternino is the 2020 Officer of the Year. Messenger, please step up. There was all I In 2021, COVID-19 still had a grip on our lives. Contact with other people was discouraged by the CDC and the World Health Organization. There was much uncertainty in our world. That did not stop Patrolman Messenger from continuing to remain active while working. Patrolman Messenger made over 25 OBI for driving while drug impaired arrest as a certified drug recognition officer. Additionally, she continued with the community-based programs as a full cruiser and Santa Blue helpers. Even with the challenges of limiting contact with others, he delivered some of the holiday gifts to the children to their home. Additionally, her activity levels while patrolling showed she had twice the level of activity as the next closest officer. As a field training officer, she began instructing the next generation of police officers for our community. He was the 2021 Officer of the Year. Patrolman Manson proposed having a drone and unmanned aircraft system. Through a generous grant from the ELS organization, the department was able to purchase a drone. Patrolman Manson has used the drone on numerous occasions to document community events and incidents that have occurred. Additionally, Patrolman Manson has extraordinary organizational skills that has taken charge of organizing property and evidence rooms. He has also taken over form management and organized departmental forms in an electronic format. Patrolman Manson has used his computing skills to help organize not only forms, but other data-driven systems such as equipment photos and our department city web pages. For this reason, Patrolman Connor Manson received the Departmental Excellence Award for 2022. Patrolman Clay Brady. Patrolman Clay Brady has served on the U.S. Marshals Island Fugitive Task Force since April of 2021. Patrolman Brady works as a team with other local officers under the jurisdiction of the U.S. Marshal's Office to serve high-risk felony warrants. Patrolman Brady also serves as the department's range officer, organizing all firearm-related training, annual state qualification, and taser training. In addition to instructing officers in the range, he is also a field training officer. His niche is taking the time to explain when teaching and being very thorough on cases and investigations. For that reason, the Departmental Excellence Award also goes to Patrolman Clay Brady. And 2022 to the year, Sergeant Messenger. In 2022, the world was beginning to regain pre-COVID activity levels. People's lives were beginning to return to the new normal. Sergeant Messenger did not slow down. She had 360 incidents of activity. This is almost 2.5 times the next highest activity level of the next closest officer. Additionally, Patrolman now Sergeant Team Messenger leads the department in OBI arrests with 18. She obtained additional training to become one of the department's sex crime investigators and developed the skills to investigate complex cases. Tina has also continued with her community outreach programs. She became more active with the organization Heroes Helping Those with Special Needs, a local nonprofit that provides sensory bags to first responders locally and nationally. The organization provides a safety program with local fire and police departments for people in the community with autism and or other special needs. Additionally, she braved cold windy conditions outside of our launch location in November to lead another Golden Cruiser event before Thanksgiving to help families in need and raise additional funding for her Santa Blue Health Program. In 2022, she organized the 8th annual Santa's Blue Helper Program, giving 15 children from our community a light to a brighter future. And that concludes my presentation.
All right, y'all go ahead. Stand, please.
It's good. Good luck.
Office of Mayor, City of Mount Lake proclamation in recognition and appreciation of Chief John P. Gieling upon the occasion of his retirement. This proclamation is made to John P. Gieling as a testimonial of his commitment to the safety and well-being of the Mount Lake community, which began on October 21st, 1987, and formally ending July 3rd, 2023. Whereas John P. Gieling began his service in Mount Lake as a part-time dispatcher on October 21st, 1987, and moved to full-time dispatcher January 3rd, 1990. On April 30th, 1990, John P. Gieling was appointed full-time patrol officer, and on July 30th, 1996, named sergeant, further transitioning to lieutenant on April 26th, 1999, culminating with the honorable distinction of Chief of Police beginning September 17th, 2011. The city of Mount Lake today honors the service and dedication Chief Gieling has exhibited throughout his 11+ years as police chief for the city of Mount Lake. In addition to his professional career, which began in October 2021, spanning 25+ years within the law enforcement community in the city of Mount Lake. Now therefore, I, David R. Eva, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Mount Lake, and on behalf of our residents, do hereby state that it is fitting that the city of Mount Lake should join the family, friends, and colleagues of John P. Gieling in honoring him today on this happy occasion, and extend to him, his wife Holly, and his family our best wishes for his continued success in life's pursuits with many years of enjoyment during his retirement. Chief way back when. And this came from Thomas McPeak, Lieutenant, to John P. Gieling, Patrol Officer, July 11th, 1990, a written reprimand. He advised that you are receiving this memo as a written reprimand on your actions. The incident being your violation of a direct order by the Chief of Police in not removing and keeping off the premises of the police department a handheld video game. This was placed in your personnel file.
You didn't give it to me. I'll get it to you.
Now you've got the best. Thank you. Thank you very much. We know.
Lieutenant Forsyth and family. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, John Forsyth.
John Forsyth,
solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and of the state of Ohio, that I will in all respects observe the provisions of the charter and ordinances of the city of Mentor on the Lakes, and will faithfully discharge my duties as a chief of police for the Mentor on the Lake Police Department. Congratulations.
While John is signing that, could I get all the members of the Metro and Lake Police Department up here for a quick photo?
I came in from Sonora.
Very good. Okay. Former retired that are also in the room today. Active, retired. I think that's area.
What is I doing? Thank you.
I'm so serious, smile.
I'm the only one smiling. And Mayor Rogers and Mayor Eagle, can we get ones with both of you, please? You're all part of it. You're there. If you want to do this. Thank you. Everybody good? All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you.
You are more than welcome to stay for the council meeting if you'd like. If not,
You learn to acknowledge it for standing outside.
All right.
Know your meaning? Yeah, CRA. Oh, yeah. All righty then. Administrative Director, Mr. Nuss, would you like to follow that,
Briefly, yes, I have, have to report tomorrow, the audit will be showing up, so we will be finished, this week with the audit. That is all I have for this.
Okay, Law Director, Mr. Lyons, good evening.
Good evening, and, I certainly can't top to cabinet.
You know, you're gonna try?
This would, be Annie Clement.
Fire Chief Patasco, good evening.
Good evening. I do have a brief report. I would like to propose an increase in millage of the fire charter amendment levy from 1.1 mils to between 1.5 and 2 mils. This to facilitate the operation of the fire department, including the hiring of additional full-time firefighters. The fire department continues to be understaffed, and with only 18 active part-time firefighters, we are struggling to maintain manning at shift minimum. This has resulted in an increase of overtime for full-time personnel in order to cover those open shifts. The overtime has already exceeded the budget, and we are only halfway through the year. I lost my place. Since the beginning of the year, I have only received one part-time application. As I outlined in my 5-year growth plan, the time and financial commitments required to achieve the necessary training to enter the fire service has created a situation that only those looking for a career in the fire service are enrolling in these classes. No one is spending their time and money to be a part-time firefighter. As I also mentioned, the disadvantage of part-time personnel is that their part-time job will never be their main priority to their full-time job. The other considerations on increasing the millage is the replacement of aging equipment, vehicles, and building maintenance. As mentioned in a previous meeting from the city administration, the roof is in need of replacement. Repairs are just a Band-Aid, and trucks and equipment in the fire department bays continue to be affected due to a leak. This completes my report.
Good. Thank you. Any questions for the administration? Hearing none. Move on to board committee commission reports. Community Development Committee.
Yes, Mr. President, the Community Development Committee met on June 15th. It started at 6 p.m. Present were myself, Desiree Thompson, Kevin Bittner, yourself, sir, Michelle Moore, Dave Shabu, and Jim Lunder joined in, as well as Mayor Eva was there, and there were many residents. The meeting was held to discuss Mr. Ness's reply to the concerns that were discussed with him during a meeting with myself, Mr. Jeff Schick, and Mr. Bill Cleveland. During this meeting, we discussed the following: bringing in other contractors to further explain the revetment process for Lobo Park, consideration of hiring a part-time or volunteer intern to improve our website, and 3, establishing a request for a proposal or request for qualifications for further development of a city comprehensive plan. In an email to me concerning these issues, Mr. Ness replied that he felt that the first issue, he felt that meeting with another contractor after the bids were done would be best if we needed it. The second, concerning the website, we are currently using an internal resource to improve our website, even though Mr. Ness doesn't have a problem with the site currently. And third, the establishing an RFP/RFQ for further development of the city comprehensive plan. He is not convinced that the outcome with the comprehensive plan is worth the expense. He is willing to do whatever council requests, however. He pointed out that we already had 2 companies in to discuss it with council. There were lengthy, sometimes heated conversations concerning these topics, especially topic number 3 about the master plan. Topic number 3 held the most interest at this time. I pointed out that of the 2 companies that presented to council, one of them stated in a phone conversation to me that they do not develop the plan, they simply implement plans. It was decided amongst committee members to support issuing an RFP, which stands for Request for Proposals, to different organizations to possibly move to the next step. Mr. Jeff Schick provided to committee with a sample RFP and a list of organizations to send it to, so we might get a reply, and the meeting adjourned at 6:41.
Thank you. Committee of the Whole met on Monday, June 15th, 7 p.m. Present were all the members of council. The discussion was the trees on the tree lawn, conflict between the proposed right-of-way legislation and chapter 1036, the tree preservation ordinances. I proposed a list of criteria required to allow a tree on the tree lawn. There was a discussion over those. There's also discussion on requiring the city approval before adding a tree to the tree lawn. And in the future, we'll need to discuss the need to set requirements for distance from property lines, but that will be related to overall tree yard discussion rather than just tree lawn. And I sent out a proposed list of trees that would be acceptable, preferred on the tree lawn. We can discuss that later in the meeting if we need to. And we adjourned at 7:10 p.m. Okay, any other board, committee, or commissions that met? Hearing none, we'll move on to open to the public to speak. This is your opportunity to come to the lectern, state your name and address for the record. Again, this is your opportunity to speak to council. It's not a back and forth discussion with council. Does anybody wish to speak? Yes.
Can I just do it from here?
Sure.
My name is Kerry Marino. I live in Medical Private Mentor. Sorry, the other side of the street. But anyways, about a week and a half ago, maybe I was at AutoZone right up the road. And coming out of the building, I was trying to get back to my truck. Sadly, the handicap, this isn't about their handicap, it's about trying to, but me and my ability or inability to walk in front of it. Anyways, I'm down off the curb. I turned to get into my truck and I took a header over for lack of any other better term, I would call it the wheel chock that keeps from hitting the curb in front of AutoZone. I fell, I actually slid on my knee. Kind of what I did there. I don't know how I slid on my left eyeglass lens without destroying my face or the lens, but 2 members from AutoZone came out to help. They both, in the discussion, I heard them talk about how they had hernias, and I said, guys, I don't want you to hurt worse, please, call the squad, they're right down the road, literally. Could see them from where I was sitting on the ground. At that time, two EMS firefighters showed up and a supervisor, and I'm not sure, I had everybody's name written down, I don't know what I did on the phone, but I lost. What I had, but I've had assists from your colleagues down the road, Brian, actually at 306. For Mentor, and I will tell you this lift, first and foremost, I've always been afraid when somebody tries to get me up like hammock style, one on either side, because I'm usually left swaying back and forth. The supervisor on scene planted his foot, and I normally have my prosthesis on. He planted his foot in front of my prosthesis so I could get up without, that fear of falling into his way. And like I said, the guys that responded, they were super professional. That's the first thing. I've had the last time the Mentor responded to my house on a call, two of the EMS crew were laughing about what I was telling them. I was having a drug interaction and telling them about what was happening, and they were, outright laughing about it. The guys who responded from Mentor Lake, they were super professional. While at the same time, they kept the whole feel of everything very easy, and not, it wasn't like this super formal, but they were very professional at the same time. And the supervisor who, like so provided the extra footing, helped me get standing up, made the lift so much better than anything I've ever experienced with, the other guys down the road. So anyways, I wish I could remember their names. It happened around 11 in the morning. I know I talked to somebody over at the city offices about it. I'm hoping she would remember who the personnel involved were. And I would hope that city council, I is at the fire chief at the end of the day.
Yes,
You are in it. I don't know if you heard about this, but
I was the one bracing your.
you were the one bringing. You know the other two.
Mr. Marino, the other two were Gabe Anania and Brian Sedman, along with the chief coach.
Okay, wow, that's good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Much thanks to all of them. And I want to let you guys know, because I know you hear anytime something goes not well, when, even if it's just a perception that it didn't go well, this went exceptionally well. And I could not have been more pleasantly surprised by other actions. What for me is unfortunately an increasing situation where I have to get assistance from other people. My pride was hurting pretty bad, and they kept things from being worse than they had to be. So I can't thank you enough. Again, I'm certainly lost for name.
That's what we're here for.
If you would please pass on to the other two. EMS, is that?
Yeah.
EMS fire
Yeah,
department?
I will definitely do that for you.
That I was, and I believe I told them the same, but, I know it's nice when I hear it talk about, so, great crew over there, and, could not be more thankful, like I said, as much as it hurt my pride to have to ask for help, they made the situation a lot better, so.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Like I said, there was no way, I had surgery today, and I kept telling my wife, I gotta get up there, I gotta get up there. I can't drive it, and the wheelchair didn't have enough battery to get me from Meadowbrook over to here, but, there was no way I was not gonna be here. So I'll let you know about that.
Well, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Does anyone else wish to speak tonight? This portion. All right, then I will close this portion open to the public. We'll now move on to legislation for council. We need to amend the agenda to add 2023-0-18, which you all should have a hard copy of, as well as emailed out earlier. The motion to amend.
Motion made.
Seconded. Made by Mrs. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Morris. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore? Aye. Mrs. Thompson?
Aye.
Mr. Morris?
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo?
Aye.
Mr. Lunder?
Aye.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye. Resolution number 2023-R-15 amended. Could you please read it by its title?
Resolution number 2023-R-15, amended third reading, a resolution approving the 2024 budget.
Is there any discussion on this? Is there any motion on this?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made. To approve.
Second.
And seconded by Mrs. Thompson. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye. Resolution number 23-R-17, if you could please read it by its title.
resolution number 2023-R-17. A resolution confirming the appointment of Brandy Montgomery to the Board of Zoning Appeals and declaring an emergency.
Any discussion on this?
Motion to suspend.
Second.
Motion to suspend by Mr. Morris, seconded by Mrs. Thompson. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Morris, seconded by Mr. Shaboo for approval. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye. Resolution number 20, well, before we even start this one. For 2023-R-18 and R-19, Mr. Lyons, if you could address why we have two of those on there?
Yes, I would be happy to do that. Council, on the prior meeting, discussing giving the voters the opportunity to pass a levy that would fund the Beach Park erosion project down at Groveland. The plan that we are talking about going is through the Shoreline Improvement District. Shoreline Improvement District is issues its own bond and it's that agency that does it, not the city issuing a bond. As a result of that, it's not our direct debt, but instead, the payment for that bond is issued is then assessed against the taxes as a special assessment against Boulder Beach Park. The same as it would be for any owner along the shoreline that would take advantage of that program. The advantage to the city and to other homeowners is that you get a lower interest rate because these are tax exempt bonds. The Ohio Revised Code, in terms of the tax levy law, specifically allows levies to be put on for bonds and for notes. There's nothing in there directly that applies whether or not we're allowed to put a bond issue on specifically for this project, only. We have asked both the SID attorney to address it. We've also asked the county auditor's office that has contacted the Department of Taxation, which has to approve all of these levy languages. And they're struggling with that. My guess is because they're probably thinking it doesn't apply and they're looking to see if it can. So as a backup plan, we are allowed to put on a levy for parks and recreation. Okay, but it's just a general parks and recreation levy, the same terms. You know, this would be 15 years and, you know, the millage is 0.75 mils. So it would raise the same amount of money. But we can't say it's specifically for Lola Beach Park. Council can pass a resolution to tell the residents that that's what the money is going to be used for. I'm sure the council would be, you know, would follow, you know, what they say, but it's not as a matter of statutory tax levy law. It's more like a general fund levy where you can use it for any purpose. We would be allowed to use it for any purpose for parks and recreation. But then the voters would be off the bat. So I thought that it would be best if we took the step of passing both of these, submitting them to the auditor's office. To see if the auditor's office will approve the bond ones, and because they're gonna have to get approval from the Department of Taxation in order to allow that to go. And if they're saying that we can do it, then it would be able to go on the ballot. If they say no, then we have the backup plan of the Parks and Recreation. And I know it's the full intent of council, to only act on one of these if they act on either one. Okay, but the first step in putting a levy, before the voters is to ask the auditor how much money this would raise at this type of millage in terms of a levy on people's property. And this one's a little different. It would actually raise, well, actually, we're still exempt in terms of what they do, but we'd be paying the bill and it's assessed against our property. Okay, so.
Thank you. One further question. That is on the resolution number 2023-R-19, the January 1st, 1925 date. Can you tell us what that is?
Yes, I can, and when I was putting this language in, right directly from the statute, that is the language that's in the statute, it's not something that we created or that we made a typographical error on. It's right out of section 5705.19, and I believe it's B, and it's word for word in the statute, and so in order to be safe, you always put the wording in the statute there.
So just to be clear, we are not trying to raise money to pay for a debt that's over 100 years old or almost 100 years old. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct.
Thank you, because Mr. Skip Gray decided that was what we were trying to do, and I wanted to make sure it was clear that that was not what we are trying to do here.
It was brought to my attention that there was some language that was being, submitted to people, in Mineral Lake Facebook activity. And I and another administration person read the statute specifically, and I think I have a copy in my box if anybody wants to see the actual language. The statute.
Thank you. All right, resolution number 2023-R-18, if you please read it by its title.
Resolution number 2023-R-18. A resolution declaring it necessary to levy an additional 0.75 mil tax levy for the purpose of parks and recreational purposes in the city and requesting the Lake County Auditor to certify the total current tax valuation of the city and the dollar amount of revenue that would be generated by that additional levy and declaring an emergency.
Just for clarification, we also need to pass this tonight to be able to send it to the auditor. Is that correct?
Yes, it would have to be passed, so that we'll get the numbers back, hopefully on both. And then you'll make a choice, and we have a meeting in, July. You would, at that time, if you decide to pass it, you would have to suspend the rules, pass it by an emergency measure, in order to put it on the ballot, because it has to be to the Board of Elections 90 days before the November 7th election. So I say it has to be there by August 1st.
Okay.
Motion to
And that's
suspend.
the main thing that we have to pass those charter amendments, if we're gonna put those on the ballot, that has to be the Board of Elections by that same time period.
Motion made by Mrs. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Morris. Roll call, please. For suspension of the rules.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Motion for passage.
Motion made by Mr. Morris, seconded by Mr. Shaboo for passage. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner.
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye. Resolution number 2023-R-19, if you could please read it by its title.
resolution number 2023-R-19. A resolution declaring it necessary to levy an additional 0.75 mil tax levy for the purpose of the payment of debt charges on certain described bonds, notes, or certificates of indebtedness of the subdivision issued subsequent to January 1st, 1925, and requesting the Lake County Auditor to certify the total current tax valuation of the city and the dollar amount of revenue that will be generated by that additional levy and declaring an emergency.
Motion.
Yeah, not 100-year-old debt, but okay, yes.
Motion to suspend.
Motion to suspend by
Second.
Mr. Morris, seconded by Mrs. Thompson. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Morris, seconded by Mr. Shaboo. Again, not 100-year-old debt. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore, aye, Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson, if I may,
Yes.
I have to admit that when this was pointed out to me about the January 1st, 1925, I was a little baffled myself, and it's like, I can't wait to hear the reasoning for the two of them. So, yes, and Mr. Gray did contact me as well, and I said, just wait till Tuesday night and we'll hear the explanation. So,
Legalese,
yeah,
like I had told him. Yeah, not 100-year-old debt. Ordinance number 2022-0-25. There's a public hearing scheduled for July 25th at 7 p.m. I won't make you read that one since.
thank you.
Ordinance number 2023-0-06, third reading amended, assigned to the ordinance committee, hasn't been returned, still there. Ordinance number 2023-0-07, third reading amended, assigned to the council committee of the whole, still there, not coming back to you. Ordinance number 2023-0-12, second reading, you can please read it by its title.
Ordinance number 2023-0-12, second reading. An ordinance providing for the submission up to the electorate of a proposed amendment to the charter of the city of Mineral Lake, authorizing the amendment of Article 12, Section 12.05, in order to continue the existing 1.1 mil tax levy for the purpose of providing for fire operations of the city for 5 more years through tax year 2028.
Discussion.
I got a question.
One at a time, this is Thompson.
Do we know how much this is, millage this will cost the residents?
Yes,
Perfect.
which village?
Both, 1.1 and 1.2.
So 1.1 is for all three charters is $133 per $100,000.
That's for all three?
All three, correct,
And that's per year.
correct. And what was the second one? Were you looking for 1.5 or 2.0?
I think it's at 1.2.
No, 1.5 and
Oh.
2.0,
Oh, 2.0.
somewhere in that range.
Okay, so 1.5 is $147 per $100,000 home value, and 2 is $164.50. And that's still all three of them,
How much was two?
60.
$164.50
$164.50.
for $100,000 of home value a year. So you're looking at an increase for 2 mills, you're looking at an increase of $31.50 a year just for this one. Just for the fire levy. 1.5 is $14 a year. And 1.1 would be no change.
Thank you.
You had a question, Mr. Lunder? Gee, you wait your turn, you.
Are we gonna send this to ordinance to discuss this, or you wanna discuss, how do you?
Well, I said, hey, it'd be the finance committee.
Okay.
It's a finance issue, so. But y'all are here now, discuss now. I have a question. If the voters decided that raising it was a bad idea, that they didn't want to spend more, then what do we do with not having the levy at all? How would we fund make up that loss?
That's a valid point. The, the only option to that would be to put it on ballot again next year. But we did discuss that, because it's kind of all or nothing.
Right.
And that is one of my concerns.
I know that I put a range from 1.5 to 2. Obviously, that would be up to council what they would decide. I know the police levy is at 1.5, and the voters are okay with that. I think if we were able to move, if council would agree to the 1.5 for the fire as well. I don't think that the voters would be that upset about giving us those couple extra. And it's a step in the right direction for where the fire department needs to go.
Mr. Morris. Chief, what happens, what do you see happening if we do not approve the increase?
Well, obviously, I don't have a crystal ball, but it's always been said that the residents pay for the level of service that they want. As we continue to lose part-time personnel, the level of service is going to start going down. I can see us, depending on mutual aid from Mentor, a lot more, because we will not have the personnel to have 4 guys on duty around the clock like we really need. If we go down to 3 guys, and we get a rescue call and 2 guys go to the hospital, we're gonna need mutual aid from neighboring cities, so I can see service suffering in the future.
Do you still do the recalls for part-time people that live in the area?
I do,
Okay,
but on average, depending on the shift, we might get 1 or 2 guys in on those. Sometimes we don't get anybody.
thank you. Mrs. Moore?
If we decided to change the millage in this, would we have to go through any special steps or any special processes? Like, I know how we're doing it to get the numbers to do for the discussion for doing like the revetment or perk funding.
Charter millage is outside of the Ohio Revised Code chapter 5705 process. We don't have to ask the auditor's office for the amount of money that it raised in order to put it on paper. Instead, but you are allowed to put charter millage on and have that for a vote of the people. So we would just ask for amendments. Right now, this was originally passed, what, 2014, I think. Passed in 2014. It was renewed in 2018. We took advantage of being able to bring it to the voters so that we would have 3 chances to pass it the same way they do a regular millage or renewal. When it went on the ballot in 2018, the ballot language indicated it was a renewal. If you do what is being proposed, I'm pretty sure that that the election board and the secretary of state would have it indicated that it's a renewal plus an increase. Okay, so that clearly stated, and because that's the way it works, for regular millage. We have to put on whether, like on the 0.075, once you get past January 1st of 1925, you'll see the word additional up there. Okay, and so it's clearly an additional levy, what it is. So that would be the same situation here. If this would go on and not pass, people are usually more often than not, I think, accepting a renewal, if they don't know what the money is spent for, additional ones are always harder to pass, what I understand. And, so we're missing out on that renewal chances, we can still have 2 more renewal chances next year. I hope that ends.
Mrs. Thompson.
So the overtime, you said we've depleted that fund line. So any more overtime moving forward, is that gonna have to come out of the general budget?
There's a little bit of wiggle room in there. In a different line, but eventually, yes. Soon, it will come out of the general.
Anyone else?
On top of that too, and Chief can attest to this. We only have one more part-time individual in the pipeline that could fill a full-time role. So the next time we would go out, let's say, to hire additional full-time, it would be from outside of our department. So that's the kind of situation we're at. We also talked about, if you look at the makeup of the 18 active, we have how many that have 20+ years from.
Then we have 5 senior members, 2 of those with over 20 years of experience, and 3 with over 30 years. And our most senior guy almost has 40 years of service with us. So these gentlemen at any time can decide that it is not worth it anymore and be gone in the snap of a finger. So
And we do have, the budget for that one we did talk about that was in the pipeline, for the rest of this year. Going forward next year, we wouldn't have it without a general fund.
Could we get a copy of the budget? I'd like to take a look at that before making a final decision. If that would be possible, just to refresh my memory as to what that looks like, please.
It does not have to be passed.
Okay.
It does, in order to be on the ballot, it has to be passed by a meeting in July. Although technically, I've been told in the past that the charter amendments, the 90-day rule doesn't apply, but we would really upset the election board. I don't want to test that because they have so many new requirements that are on them, especially because of the early voting, that they have to make sure they get these. Plus, we have to put an ad in the paper and letting people know just the charter amendment process.
Anyone else? Hearing none. So we'll go to 3rd reading. Ordinance number 2023-0-13, if you could please read it by its title.
Ordinance number 2023-0-13, second reading. An ordinance providing for the submission to the electorate of a proposed amendment to the charter of the city of Minnetonka Lake, authorizing the amendment of Article 12, Section 12.04, in order to continue the existing 1.5 mil tax levy for the purpose of providing for police operations of the city for 5 more years.
Any discussion on this one? Any motions? Hearing none, that will go on to 3rd reading. Ordinance number 2023-0-14, if you please read it by its title.
Ordinance number 2023-0-14, second reading. An ordinance providing for the submission to the electorate of a proposed amendment to the charter of the city of Minnetonka Lake, authorizing the amendment of Article 12, Section 12.06, in order to continue the existing 1.2 mil tax levy for the purpose of providing for road construction and repair purposes of the city for 5 more years through tax year 2028.
Any discussion on this? Any motions? Hearing none, this will go on to third reading. Ordinance number 2023-0-15, please read it by its title.
Ordinance number 2023-0-15, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Minnetonka to enter into an agreement with the Lake County Board of Commissioners to participate in the Urban Entitlement Community Development Block Grant, CDBG program, and for the utilization of funds made available by the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended and declaring an emergency.
Is there any urgency to this one?
Not that I'm aware of.
Is there any discussion on this one?
I am open to suspending the rules and passing this because this is for us to apply to be involved in the block grant program, which is going to bring grant money into our city. I know a lot of times grant funding is first come, first served based on need and things like that. I'm considering the makeup of our city. I think it would be important to pursue any kind of grant funding that's available to us.
I would agree with Michelle.
Anybody else?
I think that there may be some urgency too, because I think that the county has to requalify every certain number of years in terms of having enough communities participating in this. I think that may also be one of the purposes.
Motion to suspend by Mr. Morris. Seconded by Mr. Bittner. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Mr. Bittner.
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo.
Aye.
Mr. Lunder.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Motion for passage.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Morris, seconded by Mrs. Thompson for passage. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Mr. Bittner.
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo.
Aye.
Mr. Lunder.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye. Ordinance number 2023-0-16, if you please read it by its title.
Ordinance number 2023-0-16. An ordinance to approve the editing and inclusion of certain ordinances as parts of the various component codes of the codified ordinances to provide for the adoption of new matter in the updated and revised codified ordinances, repealing ordinances and resolutions in conflict therewith, and declaring an emergency.
Just so you know, they're already online, so might as well suspend the rules.
Suspension.
Second.
Made by Mr. Morris, seconded by Mr. Bittner for suspension. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Morris.
Aye.
Mr. Bittner.
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo.
Aye.
Mr. Lunder.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye.
Passage. Motion for
Second.
passage.
Made by Mrs. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Morris for passage. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye. Ordinance number 2023-0-17, if you please read it by its title.
Ordinance number 2023-0-17. An ordinance repealing chapter 893, Community Reinvestment Area.
Okay, the reason I proposed this was because we had a long conversation last year regarding this, trying to adjust it in different ways that weren't feasible, step down plans, changing the years for certain things and not for other things. It was a complicated mess that we weren't going to be able to get the auditor to deal with. And then throughout this year, we've talked about how, well, we can't afford to do this, we can't afford to do that. Well, why are we giving away tax money? So I haven't really seen a lot of benefit from the CRA, not what I had hoped to see in this period of time. I haven't seen what I had hoped, which was people adding on to their homes, bringing up the homes into, more up market to the area. Yes, we've seen some new homes go in. Usually it's already vacant land, which, gosh, what a surprise, they're gonna build on vacant land that's already there. That's not really what the CRA's purpose was, that wasn't what our goal was when we passed this. So that is why I'm proposing that we just repeal it, because I don't see, if we're gonna say we can't afford to do things, why we should be spending that money, that tax revenue, giving it away, basically. Because right now it might be, it's somewhere around just over $8,000 a year. Over 10 years, that's $80,000. I mean, that's significant money. And it's only bound to get larger if other people apply for it as well. So people who currently have the abatement would still have their abatement. We just wouldn't be accepting any new applications for it. So I wanted to have a discussion on that. Yes, Mr. Bittner.
So just first thought. Is it not up to that 100%? We could decide, or I shall say, whoever gives the abatement, we don't have to give 100%.
No, we don't have to give 100%.
So when we did our step down program, we kind of, in my eyes, went about it wrong. We should have did that internally and maybe thought of a process of doing it and of awarding percentages based on what our criteria is. Versus sending it to the auditor for them to do that. And we can't do a step
Again,
down.
you're getting it very complicated.
We can't do a step down program. We can't do that. It's just gonna be percentage based. We don't have to give 100% all the time. But you're still giving incentive to people to do things. I agree, it hasn't been as productive, but it's been a tough time too.
I could see not giving the CRA any commercial or multi-family developments. Just for, any resident who wants to rebuild it, but again, we go back to what you said. I'm not sure it's gonna be that much value, we need the money.
Well, I've also seen a lot of people who have done things with their homes, so haven't applied for the CRA either. Very large barn garage in our neighborhood that, wasn't a CRA application. Which surprised me, because I mean, I'm sure that raised the.
And I talked to that guy too.
Yeah. But,
He didn't want to.
so either people are deciding that it's not worth the effort for the small amount that it would save them. Or, I don't know what, the reasoning behind it always is, but, that small amount is still a large amount to a city that. Talks about not being able to fund things, so.
I have a question. If we decide, just to, for instance, tonight, to cease this CRA, so we would not receive any further application, period. Done.
We would stop receiving
And
applications.
there are
for
some
the
things
existing
that are
ones.
in the process, but haven't applied. And that would apply, we would not accept it from them. Is that correct?
Is that correct, Mr. Lyons? So we would not accept any future applications, even if somebody's building right now and said,
Or going to be building soon?
My recollection is that you can't apply until after you've completed the project.
correct.
So my guess would be, looking up to see if there's any case law on it. Instead, we terminated it effective today. They would not get it. That doesn't mean there couldn't be a legal challenge because it's available at that time. And if the council could, in terms of the language, repeal could indicate any building project that had commenced as a today or whenever they feel it are still eligible. I mean, that's up to you if you think that that's fair that people were doing that based, in terms of relying on the CRA. And there may be some people out there that are in that situation.
What else?
I would, myself probably abstain from repealing this because I have a family member that's working diligently to try to get the permits to build a garage. So, and I know he was counting on applying for this, but I understand. And I've talked to him about this and he understands too. If it goes away, it goes away. He's still gonna build the garage.
Anyone else?
It also doesn't have the emergency language in it. It means it wouldn't go into effect. You know, once it's signed by the mayor for 30 days.
Anything else? Put this on second reading. Ordinance number 2023-0-18, if you could please read it by its title.
Ordinance number 2023-0-18. An ordinance extending the existing 6-month moratorium on the acceptance and processing of applications for zoning and or occupancy permit approvals for elderly apartments in the area designated as the RTARP area in the Minner-on-the-Lake zoning ordinances and the issuance of such approvals in the city of Minner-on-the-Lake for a period of 2 months and declaring an emergency.
We do need to pass this tonight because the public hearing on the RTARP ordinance is until the 25th, which is after it expired.
Motion to suspend.
Seconded. Motion to suspend by Mr. Morris, seconded by Mr. Shaboo. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
No.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Motion for passage.
Made by Mr. Morris, seconded by Mr. Shaboo for passage. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
No.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder, Mr. Johnson,
Aye. Old business. Let's see, we have the bid process, the RFP for city plan. Do we want to discuss that since you guys have sent that back now and said that your committee has said we should move forward with that?
I would like to move forward with what Mr. Schick sent us as a sample to the sites that he suggested.
Is there discussion on this?
I think would we have an RFP reviewed by Mr. Lyons to make sure that there's nothing legally in there that would get us into a situation that would create a lawsuit?
And we can definitely, if we decide to move forward with it, it will be sent to Mr. Lyons to review and.
I'm not
Justice
opposed, I'm not opposed to getting pricing on that. That's not saying that I say yes to it, but it would be nice to know from the scope of what we are looking at as far as planning for our future and creating a vision for what we would like to see within our city, how we go about that, to have an actual put forward exactly what we want, have people quote on exactly what we want and give us a price for that.
Okay,
I would like to know exactly what they're gonna do for us.
Yes.
Exactly. I mean, what do they call it? Not just expected.
I give a lot of thought to this. I have been a proponent of having a city plan. I think it's important for us to have one. As an investment in our future, so where we're going as a city, but at the same time. I've started to realize that just because you have a plan doesn't mean anybody's actually gonna follow it. And what made me come to that realization was that our zoning code and our ordinances are elements of a plan. And this body who agreed not that long ago that we wanted to rezone Andrews Road to be business. The first time a developer came along with an idea, a majority and the mayor went, ooh, shiny object, let's go after it. And we threw the plan right out the window. So just because we have a plan is irrelevant if we're not actually going to follow it. And that's been true for a long, long time in this city. I mean, if you look at just our ordinances, look at Giant Eagle's shopping area. We have ordinances requiring certain trees in the parking area. That's part of a city plan, folks. Did we follow it? No, we just went, oh, I'll do whatever we want. Well, if we're gonna do that, then there's no point in having a damn plan. There's no point in spending the money to have a plan. And there's sure as hell no point in asking somebody to go and work their asses off to try and propose a plan if we're not even gonna follow it in the first place. And no offense to you guys, but I have absolutely zero faith that you guys would actually follow a plan if we had one. Because you've already shown that you won't follow a plan that we have had. So why waste our time and our money to develop a plan that we're not even gonna follow anyway? I just don't have confidence in that. You know, you guys chased after the shiny object when it was proposed in front of you. You know, I get it. You know, what's there on the corner is hideous and ugly and nobody went, but you know what? There were other options as to what could go there. Just because the one developer that the landowner decided she would work with proposed housing. You guys went for it. You know, if she really wanted a home for mom, she could have done the damn cemetery. Just saying. That was an option in that business. Now, nothing says we can't have a cemetery there. Here's a home for mom. But, you know, if you're not gonna follow a plan, why go through this whole process? And I just don't have faith in you guys that you would do it. So I am not gonna support going forward with an RFP. And I regret that because I seriously do think having a city plan, one that we would follow, is critical for our development into the future, because we should be forward thinking. We should be looking at where our city is going to be 20 years from now, 30 years from now. Yes, I understand that many of you will be dead by then. But you know what? There's going to be people in this city and we should be looking towards that. What is the infrastructure that we should have? What should we look like?
What are you trying to see about us? Some of us are gonna be dead by then. I'm sorry. Sir, I understand your point. But I would still like to see us proceed with the RFP to see what's out there, see what it would cost. And yes, perhaps this pep talk did some good. Because I know I was not for that property development down there. And I know some were, some weren't, some saw us having our hands tied. I didn't. I'm sure others have varying opinions of all that. But I'd like to see what pops up. See if it is something we can follow.
I'm gonna speak too, is that, you know. As with anything else, we could say this is the plan that we want to see, this is our idea, this is our vision, this is where we would like to see the city go in the future, but elected officials change. We could all come up for election and not get reelected, so the future isn't 100% reliance on our decision and our enforcement of any plan or any vision or any guide. So to say that in the future, us or future leaders or future generations are gonna throw a plan out the window and not follow it, I can't take offense to that.
Facts hurt, sorry.
Plans change,
Yes.
things change.
Plans
We
have
saw that-
changed.
Wait, give me my time, please.
Sure.
We've seen that with this world with COVID. You know, people have went from Progressive, this big, beautiful place that, you know, acres. Money coming into that city. Do you think they planned on COVID? Do you think they were set when they all moved out, now are working from home? Things change. You are right, we did this redo with Andrews on the zoning. It sat there how long after doing that? With zero interest. That we know, we don't know, it's personal property, once again, we don't decide what goes on personal property. Even with a plan, we can't decide what goes on personal property. We can say what we'd like to see, but that's it. We gotta be open to change.
And yes, plans should change over time, but they should be well thought out changes of the plan. Not, ooh, shiny object, somebody's proposed something different, let's chase after it. That's not how plans should change. Plans should change because we go from a holistic view. Yes, we think this should be in this area. This is how the plan should change, not chasing after a developer because they propose something.
In my opinion, in my eyes, I saw betterment for our city with this proposal. You did not. That's okay. We're different. I feel it's a good development. I felt it was good for the city. That's why I supported it. I still will stand here today and say I felt it was good for the city.
The problem with us having a plan and a vision is that we don't own any of these properties except for that little empty lot over there. And right here where City Hall sits. If you owned a piece of property and you were going to build a house and somebody came to you and said, this is our vision for our street. You can only build this house in this color with this size. And had a bunch of restrictions on you, would you proceed with building that house on that property or would you look elsewhere? We can go out to a developer or a company who does city planning and say, can you help us come up with a vision and can you help us come up with ideas? But we need somebody who can go out there and say, you know, yes, these are private properties, but know how to talk to those people, talk to property owners, talk to people who invest and build. And say, this is why you need to come build in this city. I'm not qualified to do that. I don't know if anybody else on council or that works for the city administration has the qualifications and the ability to go out to private property owners and say, hey, come and invest in our city. Whereas maybe if we talked to somebody who that's what they do for a living, they might be able to help us spark some interest and fill some of these empty storefronts or get some of the people who own these to maybe make some changes and make it a little bit better or a little bit brighter for the people who live here.
Just going off of Michelle's, I don't think some of the comments that Michelle made, I don't think we're like an HOA community. So I don't think we're gonna be telling private residents on what color siding to use and, you know, they have to use vinyl windows and not wood windows. I don't think that's the whole idea of this. I think it's just for bringing businesses in and making the community more appealing to other people coming in. That is how I am seeing this.
We need somebody to market our city.
So that kind of starts with a comprehensive plan. Okay, when you think about it, like I've done a lot of legwork on this as well, some of our residents have. We are the only community that I can find in Lake County and probably Northeast Ohio that does not have an active comprehensive plan. And it's not designed as Desiree put, to tell somebody what color house they gotta have or anything with the private residents. It does affect public lands and commercial properties. So that you're not putting just every little store you can everywhere, like Mr. Johnson put it, oh, a shiny object. Our city is becoming way too full of smoke shops, gaming stores, and all the same type of stuff that gives us a kind of poor image, in my opinion, and it's strictly my opinion. I mean, but we can't sit here and pass legislation every time another smoke shop wants to open up or vape shop or whatever and say, oh my gosh, we don't want any more of those. But that's the way it's going. There's gonna another one open up down the street here. And I look at that and just shake my head. I mean, a lot of people used to criticize another Lake County community because their main thoroughfare was full of shops like that. And it took time to clean it up. Well, I don't want us to have to clean it up. I want us to stop it. Organize, get things prepped for 20, 30 years down the road. So when I come back to haunt this place, I'll have something to haunt. I'm sorry, I had to do that. Got him to laugh too.
I think you started it.
Anyone else? Sorry, motion.
Motion to move forward the RFP.
Second that.
Motion made by Mr. Bittner, second by Mr. Morris to go forward with an RFP. For a city plan. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson,
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
No. Any other old business?
If I may. Mary, but we used to get reports from Lane Smith monthly on the financial statements and so forth. If you find out what happened to those, we haven't gotten them since last July that I know of. Sure. Please.
Anybody else? Any new business? Okay. Open to public speak. Yeah, this is your opportunity to come to the lectern, state your name and address for the record. Speak to council, not a back and forth with council.
Hello, my name is Earl Curris. I'm at 7523 Salida Road. I listened carefully to everything that was said today, and one of the things that was quite interesting to me was the approval of us going for the community development block grant and getting it approved immediately after the first reading. And in doing research on that, I found out we were also a member of this block grant the term before that as well. What I don't understand or know at all, and maybe it's at some point I could find out, is did we ever get any grants from this? And is it consistent grants? Is it, and what do we get from it? Because one of the things in my research, which I thought was really quite interesting, is Lake County encourages a citizen participation plan, encourages to get grant money and to be on the top of the list of grant money. And I'm reading through all their stuff. They want cities, people, it says the citizen protection plan reflects various ways in which citizens may participate in these HUD programs towards fulfillment of overall HUD citizen participation goals. Here's some key things. Encourage citizens, particularly low and moderate income residents and residents of low and moderate income neighborhoods, to participate in the major planning and implementation efforts, including the development of a 5-year consolidated plan, annual action plan, substantial amendments to consolidated action plan, and the consolidated annual performance and evaluation report, an assessment for fair housing. They're telling us the plan. They're begging us to plan in the grant money. Provide information on community needs that can be addressed with HUD and CPD funds. Let Lake County know we are all for this. Participate, be part of it. So council, management, community can all stand as one and say, this is why we want this stuff. And it shines light when they got to make a decision on who gets whatever limited funds it is. They want this participation. Another one, generate involvement in the commitment to propose solutions. Provide community support and participation in various projects funded with HUD CPD funds. I just think that it's screaming our name everywhere, that the Lake County participating in this trying to get grant money. If they see that we are uniform and that we are committed, I think we have a higher probability of success. And I also believe that if we can get the majority of people to like the plan, we won't want to deviate as much from it, which means we got to get management to like it. We got to get council to like it. We got to get the citizens to like it. Boy, if we could roll in one direction, if we can really row, we can be unstoppable. That's all I gotta say. That's.
Okay, we won't be having any of those type of applause. Is it appropriate?
Jeff Schick, 7533 Salida. Thank you for advancing the RFP to the next level of discussion. The citizens who put that together, some of whom are here, but there were many more. And the discussions extended a lot of time. Evenings, weekends, overall. I would say hundreds and hundreds of hours of thinking about our city. And I'm not in any way diminishing the thousands of hours that you people think about our city and that you act on behalf of our city and the thoughts. I couldn't be prouder of my city, to be honest with you. I didn't propose it as a final product. I proposed it as an interim product from a lot of people with a lot of experience. Hands-on experience in running businesses, running households, and operating successfully at whatever they do. There are a lot of X's in that document. If you haven't taken the time to read that document, please read it completely. And recognize in there that it's a starting point so that, Mr. Shaboo, we don't ask people to tell us what they're gonna give us. We tell them what we want them to give us. That's the intention behind the RFP. And if you'd like, I will sit with each of you and all of you, including fire chief, police chief, anybody in administration, to help you understand how that RFP can be a tool that not only takes that wonderful vision and mission statement you folks liked and brings down from that the right terminology to have a set of principles and philosophies that describe our wonderful city and how we will operate. What do we value and what do we care about? And then from there, that trickles down through a plan that brings in leadership thinking, not just from this city, but leadership thinking from across this country. Those websites that I provided have absolutely the best possible thinkers in urban planning, in suburban planning, and rural planning. And I am personal friends with the director of the National Council for Urban Economic Development for the last 35 years. He's also only the leading director for international economic development activities. These are quality people who want to come to a community like this and lend advice. Now, how we manage their advice, I honor your strength tonight, Mr. President. How do we manage good advice? We manage it with thoughtful leadership. We manage it with excellent planning. We manage it with what are simple, smart objectives. If you haven't been in a strategic planning class, SMART, it's simple, specific, measurable, achievable, simple stuff. As a timetable, there are ways to implement all good plans. It takes commitment. It takes a little time. It means we have to change some job descriptions maybe. It means that the city can do it. And you don't have to be alone. I honor what Earl said. We're not asking you to do things without help from us. We're asking you to accept our help to help all of us succeed. Conversation I had with the mayor about what his vision was for uniform streetlights and better walking access throughout the city. I couldn't applaud that any bigger or louder. That's what a CPD grant is about. Those kinds of things that make our city wonderful for people. It makes us contiguous as a community, not islands living beside each other that don't talk and communicate. This is not simple. But it is sure worth it. It's sure worth it for my property value, your property values, and the welfare of all of our children and grandchildren. I sat back there a little bit and I leaned back to someone behind me and said, I might have the top of my head come off. when you were talking. I'm glad it didn't. I recognize your strategy. I know you're smart. I know you live and work by planning. You have my commitment to help. You have my commitment to help. I will walk the streets and carry flyers for your and every charter amendment here. There's a few people in this city that know this. Most of them are my family. I have never voted no on any city, fire, police, or school levy in my lifetime. And it won't start now. You go up at 1.5, you go up at 2 point, you go up at 2.5, you're gonna have my vote and I'll walk the streets on your behalf. I'm committed to this city. Been here since 1976, off and on. Sorry for being so vocal.
I'm Stan Pulaski. I live at 7589 Salida Road. And I could honestly say, and it brought back memories for me and my previous occupation. I felt the pain of what the chief was saying. Staffing, to have the right amount of people to cover the volume of calls that a city is now coming under, especially with the EMS paramedic program. And I can tell you this, that your mutual aid partners, if they're represented by a union, and they are pouring into a city covering their alarms because they can't cover it themselves, there's gonna start being objections from the unions to the chief. And I can tell you, personally, I had to deal with that. I had to make modifications, but I had more staffing than what the chief has here. You call 911, you expect somebody to be here. And if they don't come, or they come after a long period of time, and that makes a difference, then you're gonna start getting a lot of complaints more drastically than what you're getting now, because somebody lost their life. What am I paying for living in this city? You have to have proper staffing. You do it in the levy form. My way was with a city that wanted a general tax increase. So I understand what the chief's saying, and I can tell you, I felt this pain. Thank you.
Lynn Toth, 7364 Salida. I just had a question when I printed off the resolutions for this night's meeting for the 2023 R18 and 19, where it says now therefore it is resolved that the council of the city of Fairport Harbor, Lake County, Ohio. The neighborhood on both 18 and 19, it says in bold print, and I'm just questioning that maybe that is an error. In the
An error. Clerical.
Yeah, it does.
Oops.
Anyone else? I'll close this portion, open the public to speak. Announcements and settings of meetings. We have a public hearing on ordinance number 2022-0-25, Tuesday, July 25th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Planning and Zoning Commission, Monday, July 10th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Regular agenda meeting, Thursday, July 20th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Regular meeting of council, July 25th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Other committees or commissions or
Parks and Recreation Board will meet this Thursday, June 29th at 7 p.m.
Parks and Rec. Thursday at 7 p.m. Anyone else?
So we're gonna do an ordinance because fire chief asked us to look at ordinance 672.11, increasing the fee for the fire permit. Were we doing a utilities meeting? Not gonna do the.
I don't have anything to go.
The garbage.
The rubbish thing, I talked to Mr. Ness about that. We're gonna do that in August. Or he's gonna start doing that in August.
So what is this, all? Dave. What do you guys got on this week? So 6th.
The sixth,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what time?
Is that okay with you?
Yeah, this room's reserved.
Okay. 13th.
13th we can do.
13th, okay.
Okay.
Nine.
7. Like I said, it's just, well, no, we'll have the other one back and then we'll do this.
Okay, on the 13th.
On the 13th, at 7.
So you will be finishing up the other one as well, that's been sitting there for
Yep.
weeks and weeks and weeks.
Years,
Yeah.
Is that one special?
Yes.
it would be years.
Yeah, it's July 13th at 7 PM, ordinance committee, any other committees? Does the finance committee want to meet to discuss the fire levy?
Yes.
How lovely.
July 6th,
No, that. Well,
oh, 7.
that's a Friday.
Yep.
That's open.
How does July 7th look at 7 PM?
Did we do the 13th? It's 7. Or
That's the ordinance meeting,
8 o'clock. we do?
or 8 o'clock is really for me.
Okay.
And I can do the 13th at 6 PM. Who else is on finance?
13th at 6 PM, finance committee. 13th at 6 PM.
That's good? Okay, so finance on 7/13 at 6 PM.
Anything else? Hearing none, you can just sit here or somebody can make a motion.
Motion for adjournment.
Second motion made by Mr. Morris, second by Mrs. Thompson, for adjournment, roll call please.
Mrs. Moore,
Aye.
Mrs. Thompson.
Aye.
Mr. Morris,
Aye.
Mr. Bittner,
Aye.
Mr. Shaboo,
Aye.
Mr. Lunder.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson.
Aye, this meeting is adjourned.